Welcome to Lessons in Leadership. Steve Adubato with my colleague, Mary Gamba. Mary, how are we doing today?
It's a great day every day, Steve, I wake up, I say, we're going to be positive, we're going to be productive. And my new word, unfortunately, doesn't start with a P, but it's intentional.
And I'm going to intentionally introduce our first guest. That was a ridiculous segue.
I love some of your segues.
Yes, Dr. Indu Lew is Executive Vice President, Chief of Staff at RWJBarnabas Health, one of our longtime underwriters, where I'm also honored to be doing a significant amount of executive communication coaching. Indu, and you are one of my victims. I mean, one of the people I've worked with. Indu, all seriousness, you have been communicating and leading for many, many years, but you and some of your colleagues are so open to new and different ideas about being more effective as leaders and communicators because?
Well, you always have an opportunity to learn, Steve. When we're talking about being a great leader, part of that is continuous learning. So being open to coaching sessions, being open to sharing experiences, being open to getting tips from other people, that's how you get better. It's a continual learning process.
Yeah, to Indu's point, one of the things that really strikes me, Indu, is that public health and leadership, the idea of being a leader in public health and having to communicate, think Dr. Fauci and everyone during that time when COVID was really bad. Question, how challenging is it today to be a public health professional and have to lead and communicate with so many different people, getting information from so many sources? I know that's not even a question, but I think about it a lot. Please, Indu.
Well, Steve, I think when you're a great leader and you serve in public health, there's a lot of characteristics that overlap. So first and foremost, it's the mission-driven orientation and the service to others. At RWJBarnabas Health, our mission is we are an academic health system partnering with our communities to build and sustain a healthier New Jersey. So it's that mission orientation that's very similar in great leadership with the health system and also working in public health. But there's other characteristics that really translate over. Great leaders collect, interpret, and analyze data to make decisions. The same thing happens in public health. Great leaders, they inform, they educate, and empower either their teams or the community. Crosses over in both ways. Making sure that you communicate very clearly, you're transparent, you're up to date is another important skill of great leadership, but that services us well when we're dealing with the community. So, and then I think the other piece, and this, I really feel very strongly about this, is having the trust of the team. So, and it's a bi-directional trust. And if you have the trust of the team or you have the trust of the community, you'll be able to move forward. It's that trust between the provider and the patient, the trust between the leaders amongst the team. All of that helps us propel forward in really getting the positive outcomes. So there's great overlap there.
Well said. Very, very informative and impactful, Dr. Lew. Mary, pick it up from there.
Absolutely. And Indu, we've talked a lot about this in the past, but I feel like it's constantly evolving, and it's the topic of leadership and wellness. We all have different ways to define wellness, but in the healthcare industry, I could only imagine it has to be so much more important for your nurses, the doctor, the burnout. So can you talk a little bit about how you are encouraging those around you, as well as yourself, to really focus on your wellness so you are able then to be your best self and your best leader? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So with wellness, we're dealing with a lot in healthcare. There's a lot of stress, there's a lot of pressure, and it's really important to have the wellness or self-care built into your regimen. The self-care we're talking about promotes physical well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being, and our gas tank may not always be full, but it's certainly won't be empty. So what are some of the things that you can do to promote wellness? So I think it's being very intentional. As you said, Mary, that was your word for the day. It's being intentional and maybe blocking out time for self-care. Now, as the busy day goes on, we may not be able to block a lot of time, but maybe biting it off in small chunks. And I'll share with you something that I do. So I have a pretty significant drive to work. It's about an hour, hour and a half drive to work one way. So one of the first things that I do, and it really serves two purposes, I come in and I do a walk around the floor. The walk helps me physically move, but what it does too is it gives me an opportunity to engage with our teammates. So as you walk around, you say good morning, you ask about your teammates' family. When you start to have those conversations, you build relationships. When you build relationships, you become more empathetic towards someone. And when you become empathetic, you then have that foundation of trust. And that in and of itself, that human connection, is another way to build resiliency. So that little walk around really helps me kind of get moving. And you try to do that a couple times a day, whether it's drinking water, whether it's sleeping well, whether it's eating well, the exercise. You need all of those components to really feel at your optimal. And as leaders, we really try to have our team, look at the great behaviors and great characteristics and emulate that. So we really have to model the behaviors that we want our teammates to exhibit as well.
Indu, speaking about wellness, you're a Yankee fan, right?
I am, Steve. I am a Yankee fan.
My Derek Jeter cup with water in it. Is it? I have absolutely no, Mary, that's the worst segue in the world I just made.
I'm going to create a spoof reel of all of your different segues, and Elvin and Scarlett and team, we need to do that because that would be hysterical.
But I happen to, Indu, go ahead. But being a Yankee fan is wellness.
Yes, but you have the Yankee cup with water, but you have to take it to the next level and you actually have to drink the water. So you have to be intentional about all of your actions, whether it's as simple as taking a sip of water, it's that intentionality.
But you know what, Indu, you said something so interesting about taking that walk, right? One of the things I write about in Lessons in Leadership 2.0, the tough stuff, is creating a culture of wellness. Now, Mark Madigan, your CEO, you're the chief of staff to him, to the organization. Talk about how a team, an executive leadership team, creates a culture of wellness, not just for you, because you intentionally take that walk. You are very aware of your own well-being. How the heck can you create a culture of wellness for a team, or is every person on their own on that?
Well, it's not only a culture of wellness, it's a culture of kindness, right? So culture is something that takes time to develop. So it's a culture of wellness. It's a culture of kindness. It's really making sure that you're developing those relationships. Wellness it's not only the physical component of it, it's the emotional component of it as well. So you're creating that culture. What that can mean having team meetings. It can mean going off site for a meeting where you then have a social hour with dinner afterwards. It's making those intentional moves. And it's hard. You're all very, very busy. But if you make it a priority, it pays off in dividends.
You know, Mary, as I listen to Indu, sometimes I wonder, because we're 90% plus remote. Indu, a lot of it is in person. Some is remote. Obviously, we're doing this remotely. Mary, I do wonder about the wellness and the remote piece of it. But you get the last question for Indu.
Yeah,
I go off on these tangents in my head and I just say it out loud. I'm sorry.
It's all good. There's pros and cons, and I get it, Indu. I used to have about an hour commute, so I don't know how you do it, but having that longer commute, I used to listen to podcasts, and I found that was really great. But I love the idea that you shared about taking that walk. My final question is about being a woman in leadership, particularly a woman in leadership in healthcare. What advice do you have for women? Because I do feel, and this is a question now, Steve and I have been working together for 24 years, and I have found that my leadership style has changed, that I see myself as a leader, period, less of a woman leader. So I'm just curious your perspective on women leadership, if you feel like you do need to lead differently being a woman leader in healthcare, or is it just being a leader?
That's a great question. And I want to just start with a sentiment. So it's really interesting if we look at the distance between women, that they make probably 80% of the healthcare decisions for their family. Yet, if we look at positions of women in leadership in the C-suite in healthcare, it's really lacking. If we look at our women workforce in healthcare, women comprise probably 70% of the workforce, yet they probably are in a C-suite position, maybe 10 to 13%. So what I can tell you is we should not change as women leaders. We're leaders. Women, when they have a seat at the table and they're involved in the process, they bring diversity of thought. They bring diversity of experience. They bring emotional intelligence. And what we see is that the end product is so much better than the set expectations. Really, because women are great collaborators. They are great communicators. They are able to multitask. I say all the time that women juggle so many balls in the air because we're great multitaskers. And we don't let those balls drop when we're juggling them. But if we happen to let one ball drop, we make sure we drop the rubber ball because that bounces right back. So it's all of those components that I think that make women great leaders. It's the communication skills, it's the collaboration, it's the multitasking. So I don't think we should change. But what I do believe, and truly I believe the best qualified person, regardless of race or gender, should have that position. But what I am a big proponent of is succession planning. It's leadership development skills. It is mentorship. All
That's
of the allow women to have the opportunity to go for those positions, to have the seat at the table, to take that risk, that calculated risk, to have the opportunity to fail and fail forward. So those are just some of the thoughts about women in healthcare leadership. We're making strides, but I truly believe we still have a long way to go.
Dr. Indu Lew, a lot to think about, powerful stuff, and I cannot thank you enough. Dr. Indu Lew is Executive Vice President, Chief of Staff, RWJBarnabas Health. Indu, thank you so much for joining us once again on Lessons in Leadership. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve and Mary. I had a great time.
Yeah, as did we. We're right back right after this. This edition of Lessons in Leadership is made possible by the Buccino Leadership Institute at Seton Hall University, Prager Metis, Valley Bank, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, the North Ward Center, the New Jersey Sharing Network, Delta Dental of New Jersey, the Helix, Fedway Associates, Inc., the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Veolia, Resourcing the World, Choose New Jersey, and Seton Hall University, showing the world what great minds can do since 1856.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
Promotional support for this edition of Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague Mary Gamba has been provided by NJ.com, NJBIA and New Jersey Business Magazine, CIANJ and Commerce Magazine, and the Meadowlands Chamber and Meadowlands Media.
At Delta Dental, we do more to make benefits easy to implement, use, and understand. It's why businesses large and small trust us to keep their employees smiling. Year after year, we make our clients and members happy with unmatched expertise and great dental benefits. We apply our decades of experience to give you more guidance, providing plan design options and cost-saving measures. With reliable support for you and your employees, we make administration effortless and free up your time so you can focus on other business needs. We even do more for vision care with Delta Vision. Choose Delta Dental and discover what the power of more can do for your business and your employees.
We're pleased to welcome Jeff Chiesa, who's named partner at Chiesa Shahinian and Giantomasi. Is a law firm based where, Jeff?
In Roseland, Steve. We moved about a little over a year ago to Roseland. We were in West Orange for a long time before that.
Absolutely. And by way of background, talking about leadership, listen to this bio. Jeff Chiesa has been the Attorney General in the great state of New Jersey. You were chief counsel for Governor Christie?
Correct.
And do you also admit to being a United States Senator?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do, Steve.
And describe, I'll talk to you about those experiences in a moment. Describe the firm. How big is the firm and the kind of focus of your practice? This is part, by the way, of our series, Leadership and the Law. You'll see the graphic come up, Leadership and the Law. Go ahead, Jeff.
Terrific. Yeah, Steve, we're about 200 lawyers, and we practice in virtually every area of practice in New Jersey. We assist businesses, we assist individuals, we assist in solving problems for companies and people. That's really what we do. And in every specialty that comes up, we have the experts to do that. So I'm very, very lucky to work with the people that I work with.
And speaking of experts, check out our website, stand-deliver.com. You'll see the website come up, and you'll see a previous interview we did with Jeff's colleague, Frank Giantomasi, who's a longtime friend. And it's a compelling interview talking about leadership in the law. Let me try this, Jeff. The field of law, every industry, ours, obviously, we're doing a lot of our work remotely. Every industry has changed dramatically. The biggest changes in the field of law that impacts the way you and your colleagues have to lead. Go ahead, Jeff.
One of the big ones happened when we moved into this new office. You know, coming out of COVID, we were very conservative and very protective of everybody that worked here. And so we were closed for months and months and months, cumulatively over a year. And we were very careful when we came back. The newer generation of lawyers aren't as keen in some instances on being in the office, certainly 5 days a week. When I started, which is over 30 years ago, at a law firm, by the way, with Governor Christie. I met him at a job interview in 1991. It was 5 days a week, jackets and ties 5 days a week. You put your jacket on when you left your office. Now it's a much more hybrid type work environment. So it's 3 days a week that we require in the office, which is great. I think most people are here more. And as we've gotten further away from COVID, people are here more. Then it's called Dress for Your Day, which has taken some getting used to, but essentially, if you're going to be with clients or in front of a judge or anything like that, you're in a suit and tie. If you're going to be doing research or working in your office and not with clients, you can dress more casually. That's a reality of the law business now. It's not an option anymore if you're going to recruit and retain the best people. It's still professional, but it's just different than it was when I started practicing.
Interesting. Mary, as you jump in here, I often think about client relationships, sponsor relationships, business development, and how hard it is and challenging it is to do remotely. I'm going to ask Jeff about that in a minute. Was that where you were going, Mary, or are you going into a different
We usually
direction?
share a brain, Jeff, and usually I would say the answer is yes. But in this case, we don't share a brain, Steve. But since I'd say, why don't you go with your question first, and then I'll hop in with mine, because you already started, you intrigued our guests.
Yeah, so Jeff, I'm obsessed by this, and Frank and I talk about this all the time. We were a party of one of our mutual friends recently, and we were talking about relationships. And I know everyone who watches our series knows that because I repeat this all the time, I don't believe relationship building is simply organic. Yes, some of it is, but a lot of it's intentional, strategic, methodical, building relationships, giving, taking, sharing, helping. Harder to do in this environment because it's either remote or hybrid, or relationship building in business has always been the same?
I think it's much harder to do remotely. And I'm out 3 nights a week typically. And many times it's strategic. Oh, sure. Still. Absolutely. Absolutely. Whether it's an event, whether it's a client meeting, whether I'm being introduced to somebody, or whether I'm talking with somebody inside the firm. As the firm has gotten bigger, we're over 200 lawyers, as I said earlier, trying to develop relationships with everybody and get to know people on a personal level, so that when you're working together, it's not as formalized or as formally, or there's no impediment to the back and forth between me and the younger lawyers in the firm. And so I try to do that as much as I can. Some of the younger lawyers, it's maybe at lunchtime, but sure, it's 3 nights a week. I'm sure it's the same for Frank. And I think it's the only way to develop and maintain those relationships. And quite honestly, I like doing it. I like many of my clients have become my friends. I love meeting interesting people and talking with them about the same things you're asking about. I ask all of my business friends, what are you doing? What's your cadence in the office? Are you in 3 days a week? Are you in 5 days a week? Some of my friends have said to me, I don't care if people are here 0 days a week, as long as they're productive. And I will tell you this, the younger lawyers in our firm and all the lawyers in our firm through COVID maintain the highest levels of productivity and professionalism. It wasn't easy to do. It was new to everybody, but they did it. And so that's one of the reasons we've maintained at least 2 days a week for people to work remotely because they earn that right during that time.
Along those lines, that's why, Mary, you coined the expression, we're focused on impact over activity, productivity. So jump in, Mary.
All the time. And Jeff, Steve hit it on the head. We are always about that impact. Sometimes people just want to make it seem I'm at my desk, I'm doing a lot of stuff, but I'm really not getting a lot of impact from my efforts. And in that same vein, with the coaching, the mentoring, you talked about how your firm has grown over the years. What have you found for this younger generation? You just talked about their grit. You talked about, listen, they're getting more done. It doesn't matter where they're getting it done. But what motivates them besides, you were talking about what they wear and how often they're coming to the office, but in a competitive, I'm assuming it's very competitive, attracting the best lawyers to your firm. What is most attractive? What are you finding that these younger lawyers coming in as part of our, as Steve said, this is a leadership in the law. What are they looking for from you as their employer?
Sure. I think they're looking for interesting experiences to do and partner with people of high integrity. Honestly, I think that's really what you want, right? You want to do the kinds of cases that are invigorating and difficult and enriching. And you want to do them with people who carry themselves in a way that's never going to embarrass you and going to make you proud. And so, listen, I think Frank and I have always tried to do that. I will credit our 40 to 50 crew. I'm 58. Our 40-year-old to 50-year-old group is, I think, elite and among the best in the state, if not the best in the state. I think a lot of the young lawyers that come here want to work with Lee Vartan and Danielle Corcione and Marie Matthews and Matt Beck and Chiesa Giantomasi because they're dynamic, because they're accomplished, and because they make the work interesting. And if you can, listen, as a young lawyer, there's certain things you got to go through as a process, right? You're not going to be in court your second day in the office, but if you're able to work with a lawyer who shows you how you're impacting, to use your word, the case. You did this great memo for me. Here's how I'm going to use this strategically when I take a deposition or when I go to an interview or I go to the U.S. Attorney's Office. That's what they want to see. They want to understand, okay, my role right now is more limited, but can I understand how it plays a role in what you're trying to accomplish?
Interesting. One of my closest friends, who is also legal counsel to our not-for-profit corporation, Nick Greco, recently joined your firm. And one of the things that Nick said to me, because I was asking him about, Mary and I don't like the word onboarding. Like, you're onboarding someone? So Nick was,
right? Yeah.
yeah, it's like, where are you going? No. So Nick was saying that one of the things about your firm that he particularly appreciates is not just how welcoming people have been, but also, frankly, the collaboration, the sharing of information, the time that you and your colleagues are taking. And the day-to-day operation of your firm is run by whom?
So Judge Pat Costello, former Simon Judge in Essex County. I was just trying to give Judge
Costello a shout out.
Is our managing member. She's incredible. She's been an incredible resource, incredible partner, and now an incredible friend.
And there's a reason I'm saying that, because Nick said to me that Judge Costello and so many others, you just don't throw people in and expect them to be able to just pick up culture. It's not just that they're effective at what they do in the law, but each law firm, each media company has its own culture. How do you instill that quote unquote culture, particularly with new people coming in from a different operation with a different culture?
During the interview process, I'm very honest with people. I tell them right from the start, I don't care how good you are, how much business you have. I mean, I care about those things. But the first thing I want to make sure is you're not going to disrupt what Frank and I and Armin and some of the others have worked so hard to get. And that is an environment of respect, an environment where everybody is welcomed and everybody's treated fairly. And this isn't a place where you're going to go when you're going to have people screaming at each other. It just doesn't happen. We're not going to tolerate it. So we work very hard in making sure that every candidate that's going to become a part of our firm embraces that same mentality and that same professionalism and that same culture. Because even though the firm's gotten bigger, I think you both know this, if you bring in one person who feels differently than that, they can undermine that culture very quickly and if it starts to erode, you know what happens. People can lose their focus and those things happen. Now, I think the people that we've selected, and Nick's a great example, have always conducted themselves that way. And that's why when you get a hire like Nick, that doesn't come through a service, comes through a relationship with Frank. And I've gotten to know Nick over the years. It's a much, much safer way to do it, and it has a much higher yield to us as well.
Yeah, Mary, it's interesting. I talked about Jeff's background as Attorney General, United States Senator, Chief Counsel to Governor Christie. Those experiences, I'm sure, are different. In another conversation, Jeff, we're going to talk about how those experiences not only have shaped you, but also I want to ask you in a different segment why things are so dysfunctional in Washington, in Congress, and why there's a lack of leadership there. But that's another segment at another time. So to you, Jeff, to Frank, to Nick, to Judge Costello, and to the team at the firm, we want to thank you for joining us. This is part of an ongoing series we're doing on leadership and the law. It's a changing profession. Leadership is more important than ever before in the field of law, every field, but particularly focusing on law here. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. All the best.
Anytime, Steve. Great to see you. And thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Jeff.
You got it. That's
Okay.
Jeff. Don't go yet, Jeff. We're going to say
I'm
goodbye.
sorry. Oh,
Again, but
listen,
Steve,
stop.
that's all right. It's all good. He's got an appointment with a client. We'll be right back.
I'll stay as long as you like. You know that.
Thank you. Mary, is this the end of the show?
Almost the end of the show. We'll come back to it. We have a few closing remarks, so we'll see you in just a second.
Boy, I better think of something to say quick. Be back right after this.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
Promotional support for this edition of Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague Mary Gamba has been provided by NJ.com, NJBIA and New Jersey Business Magazine, CIANJ and Commerce Magazine, and the Meadowlands Chamber and Meadowlands Media. All right, folks, we got a minute and a half left on Lessons in Leadership. Wisdom, Mary, coming from, not from me. Mary, every time we, as our executive producer, she prepares these interesting leadership quotes. Mary, this comes from Simon Sinek. He says, quote, "Leadership is not about being in charge. It's about taking care of those in your charge." Wow, why'd you pick that?
I picked that because, as you know, we do a ton of work with hospital systems. We do a ton of work with the banking industry. And not only do you need to make sure that you're taking care of people that are in your charge and in your orbit, but it's the people that are around you. Earlier in this segment, we had Dr. Lew talking about the importance of just connecting with your team. And then even Jeff Chiesa was just talking about making sure that you have a culture, right? And if that doesn't respect, trust, and that all comes with making sure that you're taking care of those around you. Sure, you need to take care of yourself, but you must make sure that you're aware of being self-aware, but also other aware as well, others aware.
A lot of awareness going on there.
I know, but it's so important.
Yeah, it is. And you know, as we wrap up here, every one of our team members, our full-time team members, our contributors who do all kinds of things for us, everyone's got all kinds of things going on in their lives. And our job is to be as aware as possible, and also to be aware when Elvin Badger, our director, tells me to say goodbye.
Time to say goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. Till next time, Lessons in Leadership. This edition of Lessons in Leadership is made possible by the Buccino Leadership Institute at Seton Hall University, Prager Metis, Valley Bank, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, the North Ward Center, the New Jersey Sharing Network, Delta Dental of New Jersey, the Helix, Fedway Associates, Inc., the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, Veolia, Resourcing the World, Choose New Jersey, and Seton Hall University, showing the world what great minds can do since 1856.
This is Mary Gamba. If you want more leadership tips and tools, log on to stand-deliver.com. That's stand-deliver.com.
Promotional support for this edition of Lessons in Leadership with me, Steve Adubato, and my colleague Mary Gamba has been provided by NJ.com, NJBIA and New Jersey Business Magazine, CIANJ and Commerce Magazine, and the Meadowlands Chamber and Meadowlands Media.